Hello, friends. Hello. So, if you're feeling some energy of anger or maybe even rage bubbling up from within you, but this anger and rage doesn't feel like just throwing a temper tantrum. It actually feels like I want to move with this. I want to do something. Enough is enough. I deserve better. Congratulations, you are totally feeling the energies of the Virgo, excuse me, of the Virgo full moon with total lunar eclipse on March 13th to 14th, depending on where you live. Um, so Sarah, before I start talking a little bit about Virgo, I would love to hear from you some of what you've been feeling with this upcoming full moon and eclipse.
Yeah, you know, I've actually been feeling this is very rare for me, but I've been feeling some consistency.
Mm.
I feel like with Virgo, it's about kind of getting our day-to-day routines organized, and that has really come into play for me, but there are some things that I need to figure out now that there is some consistency. I feel like some things are coming to a point of like, okay, now it's easier to see what things need to be changed and adjusted in order to really feel more fulfilled in my day to day, in my work routines, my health routines. All of that stuff is coming together for me, um,
Nice.
which is great, but in a way that I'm wondering if it's sustainable. And
Yeah.
so that I feel like is what is going to get illuminated in this full moon. How does
Mm.
your day to day work for you or work against you?
Ooh,
And how can we release some things that can make us feel more fulfilled each day?
yeah.
Whether it's adding in a wellness routine of meditation or exercise or, eating better. I
Mhm.
realize this is silly, but like I was eating a lunch that was really big and making me feel really full, but it was like really healthy things. So I was like, oh, this is fine. And then once I changed what I was eating for lunch, I'm like, I feel so much better in the afternoon. You know, like this just feels so much better. Just little things like that,
Yeah.
I feel like will be illuminated. And if we haven't been working on those things, which is totally okay, there's a million things in life to work on. Situations may come up that say, hey, this isn't right. Maybe, you're getting stomach aches in the afternoon or something like that, something a bit more in your face about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyways, long way of saying things are coming together in my day to day.
Yeah. I'm curious if this lunation is impacting your sixth house. Because it sounds like from what you're describing, like
Yeah,
that's such sixth house stuff, right? Like the day-to-day routine. And
yeah,
I'd have to go back and check what the house. I'll be working on the horoscopes for our moon community later tonight.
yeah.
So I'll be like, I was right now. Um, fascinating. Yeah, I
That
love
is
what
sixth
you,
house though, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. But it's also very Virgo.
Yeah.
Um, it's very Virgo. And when we speak about Virgo, Virgo is the fixed earth sign. And Virgo energy is, I was writing about this in the Moon blog last night, and I really love the way this came out when I was writing about it. But the way I think of Virgo energy is like Virgo looks at nature and sees how beautiful nature is and how, um, like interconnected and how efficient and how everything has a role and a purpose and like the functionality of it all. And I feel like Virgo tries to bring that into our human experience. Let's take like the beauty and the functionality and the interconnection of nature and bring it into our daily life as a human.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
kind of how I see Virgo. And that's how my Virgo is my North node. So that makes a lot of sense to me with my relationship with Earth as well. And when we think about Virgo and it's in her light side, she is so intentional. She is so strategic. She's so organized. She's so um like great with detail, really good with like all the little details, all the little pieces. Wonderful multitasker. Things that I'm definitely working towards. Hello, it's my North Node.
hello. Yes.
And on the shadow side, we hear a lot with Virgo being, hypercritical, kind of perfectionist. So when we're having a full moon lunar eclipse in that sign, we can expect to feel some of the emotions, both around the light and shadow aspects of the sign itself. And it's helpful to know this so that if we feel ourselves, very triggered in criticism or being feeling really critical of ourselves or other people, or if we feel ourselves being like getting into the pattern of perfectionism, we can say, oh, wait a second. I'm going into the shadow aspect here. Maybe it's not perfectionism I'm seeking, but a little bit more intentionality, right? So we can kind of notice like where am I going on this spectrum here from like, dense to light, and try and bring it out of the density. Now, when we talk about full moons, we're always talking about an illumination and a release of emotions. And when I was feeling it intuitively to the energies of this full moon, I was actually kind of surprised by what I received. Um, because what I received was rage. And I guess that shouldn't be that surprising. I mean,
No.
you can pay attention to what's happening in the world and be like, that makes me angry, right? There's a lot of things that make me very angry. There's a lot of things that make me very sad. But it was very interesting to me when I was feeling it intuitively because it was a very deep and authentic sense of rage. And I felt it bubbling up in the sacral. And it wasn't the kind of anger that's like, I just want to cry and complain." It was the kind of anger that's like, we've got to move. We've got to do something with this. The only choice we have is action is kind of like the way this anger came through. And the way I felt it intuitively was that I could feel the anger bubbling up in the sacral. The sacral is the chakra that connects us with our most authentic emotions. But then instead of the anger kind of coming up, which is often when I'm feeling into like authentic rage, it usually kind of bubbles up into the heart, up into the throat. No, this time the anger actually settled downward. I felt it move down into my root, which is kind of the center of stability and security, but also where we hold a lot of fear, in that root chakra. And then it moved up into the solar plexus. And when I felt the anger move into my root, I felt it kind of do this thing of being like, all of that fear that's caused us to be kind of paralyzed, no more of that. Like, this is an anger that's going to get us into action and out of paralysis. And then when it moved up into the solar plexus, the words and the energy, the feelings that I received was, we deserve so much better than this. Enough is enough. We deserve better. So the anger itself was kind of telling a story. And I think it's important for us to note when it comes to emotions, anger is a much more motivating emotion than fear or sadness.
Mhm.
And I do think that's a big reason why this anger is coming up for this full moon is as a bridge to move us out of a little bit of like maybe passive aggressiveness or even just passiveness into the energy of action, which I was actually surprised by because, and we'll talk more about this, because in my understanding of eclipse seasons are times for us not to necessarily force a lot of control or force a lot of action, but instead to kind of respond to what is happening, to try and flow with the changes that come, to kind of like, I like to think of it as like riding the waves or just like riding shotgun while the universe takes the wheel, right? And so to feel this intuitive guidance of like, this is actually about taking some action. This is actually about you guys getting from a place of kind of paralysis into more action was a little surprising for me for eclipse season. But maybe that's the change. That maybe that is exactly the change that this eclipse season is bringing. Because again, eclipse season doesn't mean we stay passive. It's not about staying passive. It's about staying responsive. And you were sharing really beautifully about that before we went live. So I'd love to hear like kind of what your take on the eclipse is as well, Sarah.
Yeah, so eclipse season to me is, I mean, eclipse seasons in general have this sense of like, just like what you said, kind of a lack of control because there is such fast-paced
Yeah.
energy that's happening around eclipses. And so the more we want to hold on and control the situation, the more uncomfortable we're going to be during eclipse season. And so I like to suggest that people stay present because
Yeah.
eclipse season is about your emotions, right? It's about the moon. And the only way we can process our emotions is to actually be present with them.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the time we want to use our mind, which is Mercury,
Yep.
to understand our emotions in order to allow them to
Yeah.
exist, right?
Yeah.
That's not the moon. That's Mercury. And so being present so that we can sit with how we're feeling is really the first step to understanding, if that's the word you want to use, or process it.
Yeah.
Um, so that it's not sitting in our bodies
Yeah.
anymore, and we can actually do something with it.
I love the way that you brought Mercury up with this and like the difference between the moon, our emotions, and Mercury, our minds, and what you were just sharing about how most of the time we're taught to kind of intellectualize our emotions. And I know as an energy worker, a lot of the times, and I do this for myself as well as for my clients, we really have a hard time differentiating between our mind-made emotions and our authentic emotions. And so, I now have practices going deep into the sacral to get to the authentic emotions, but most of us go around all day long projecting thoughts into our emotional field, thinking things and then telling ourselves this is what we're feeling when it's actually what we're thinking. Which is like we could wax on that one for a long time. But if you've ever sat in a session with me, we often will go into the sacral to differentiate between those mind-made versus authentic emotions. But again, going back to Mercury, I love that you brought this in because a few hours, maybe about 12 hours, or maybe a little bit less. Anyway, a few hours after we have this full moon with eclipse, Mercury stations retrograde in Aries. And I actually think that's pretty supportive from what you just described, right? With Mercury going, not going, but with Mercury kind of stationing retrograde, it brings up more review, reassessment, realignment for us.
Yes.
And that actually is asking for presence as well. It's actually a time where we slow down a little bit with all the fast-paced thinking and thoughts and transportations and all the things, right? That Mercury kind of represents. And in that retrograde, we can take a little bit more time for refinement, for review, for reassessment. And I do feel like that's part of what the eclipse asks of us as well.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, it sounds like a lot to have two retrogrades and eclipse season all happening at the same time. But honestly, it's more like it sounds like a bag of trouble in a capitalistic society where we're trying to produce, we're trying to move forward, we're trying to make money, which, I get it. We're all trying to do those things. So that's where it feels kind of icky. But if we can somehow allow some space and put value on slowing down and reflecting and really understanding how this investment of time and energy, it is an investment of time and energy that then pays back later on because it all leads to greater alignment, which is worth spending the time and energy on. It
Yeah.
can bring us more money, maybe. I don't know. You know what I mean? It can just bring us more, it'll be more fruitful once we take the time to do that.
Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, Mercury starts its retrograde in Aries, which is going to feel a lot better than when it spends its last week in retrograde in Pisces. Mercury in Pisces already feels like it's retrograding, so add the fact that it is retrograding. It's just going to have our minds feeling a little foggy. Um, Granted, Mercury is in Pisces in my chart, so I'm used to it. Welcome to my brain. But again, it's just a time to kind of what I was saying earlier today on my month ahead forecast is that there could be a lot of things hanging out in our mind that we
Yeah.
don't give the time or space to lean into or go to. But with Mercury retrograde in Pisces, it kind of, if we allow our mind to kind of expand and just kind of free flow a little bit, we can kind of visit those little spaces and see what's hanging out in our mind and taking up space, whether we, then we can assess, do we want it to take up space or do we
Yeah.
want to flush this out a little bit. So that also goes perfect with the full moon, the lunar eclipse as well. So, or,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, the full moon lunar eclipse.
Yes, yes. And this is a total lunar eclipse, which means the moon will be totally eclipsed by the shadow of Earth. And it is visible here in North America and South America as well. So I know here in California, it's going to be late, like almost midnight. I'll be up. So I'm like, okay. For those of you in the East Coast, it's probably gonna be like 3 a.m. That might be a little hard to watch, but yeah, it'll be cool. And I think it's called the blood moon too, because I think when it eclipses, it starts looking pretty red in the sky. I don't know. Well, we'll see. Hopefully there'll be good visibility that night. So in terms of eclipse season, we've talked about eclipse season here before. Eclipses, again, they happen twice a year, sometimes even 3 times a year, but usually twice a year. They always come in pairs. There's always a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. We talked about this a good amount in our year ahead forecast for our moon community as well. And if you want to learn more about working with the energies of eclipses, you can also download our free moon magic guide because we do talk about the differences of eclipses versus other full moons and new moons and how to work with it. Personally, my way of working with eclipses is I actually I kind of give myself a little bit more of a break during eclipse season. It's less active manifestation. Now, that being said, we're always manifesting all the time. It's kind of like being alive, but I'm not actively working toward like, I need to make this happen. I need to make this happen. I need to make this happen. That's where I'm starting to like pull back a little bit and be like, I'm not going to make it happen, but if it happens, I'm so here for it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I do know that very well.
Personally, I choose not to make moon water, not to charge crystals during eclipse season. I will usually wait until we get to the lunation after the eclipse before I start doing that again. And the reason behind that is just because the energies of eclipse season are quite volatile. As you mentioned before, they're very fast moving, they're very fast paced. It's almost like trying to capture a tornado in
Mhm.
a very small vessel. And honestly, like I don't really want to work with that energy in an intentional way. I don't want to bring it into my home, in my crystals. I don't want to make moon water with it. But I have to say I do actually kind of love eclipse season. Um, I think there's a part of me that loves the idea of, and it's not, again, it's not passive. I love what you were sharing before about it being present, but not passive. And I just love the idea of taking some of the pressure off a little bit and just kind of like allowing ourselves to ride the waves. I mean, listen, I think things have been so volatile so far in 2025 that I think there's a lot of like just ride the waves that we're all getting comfortable with to begin with. But eclipse
Yes.
seasons can really help us with that. And what's interesting, we were talking before about a little bit of the difference between like reactivity and like being reactive versus being responsive. And a lot of how we can best utilize and be available for the really illuminating energies that come in with eclipse season is through that kind of response system versus our reaction system.
Mhm.
And one of the things that's really cool about eclipses is they both create a clarification and a shadowing, right? Like, so they'll often clarify things that have kind of been shadowed, but they'll then often sometimes shadow things that have been in front of our face at the same time. One of the things I love about eclipse season is these beautiful epiphanies that can come in when you have moments of being present, when you allow yourself to meditate, to journal, to go for a walk. You can have these moments. It reminds me of when I go to places that are like vortex spots, like Sedona, and you just have these moments where you like have these epiphanies, and you're like, oh, I can look at this in a different way. Like it almost feels like you're a little bit closer to your what some people call like your higher self or your the larger aspect of your soul, and you can have more direct communication with it.
Yeah.
But it does require us to be present. It does require us to be quiet, a little bit more quiet in order to hear the whispers of those types of messages that come through.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And, to speak to that kind of energy as well too, just to point to a couple things of the astrology. Um, there is supportive energy coming into this new full moon chart from Uranus. Now, Uranus is known as the disruptor. It kind of comes in and changes things. It brings unexpected situations, it brings sudden changes, but it's a trine, which means it's here to bring harmonious energy. And so when Uranus comes with a square, it's often frustrating and annoying. Things are like, oh, now I have to do this.
Mm.
With a trine, it's more like, oh, okay, well, I didn't think about it in this way. That kind of that epiphany that you're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's really more, there's double down energy of that coming in. But like you mentioned, that's only going to come in when we loosen our grip. If
yeah,
we're tr really trying to cling on to the ways that we want it to be,
yeah,
it's going to be difficult. Um, or you'll miss the opportunity. And it'll come back around in a harsher way next time. So there's that. And then also just to speak to the rage. that you mentioned, we didn't speak about this before, but there's a loose sextile with Mars.
Oh,
Um, Generally, I wouldn't consider it, but now hearing you talk, it kind of I see it in the chart. I'm like, okay, it's about 5 degrees out. Usually, I like to do three or less for transits. But I'm going to put it in there because it's a supportive connection with Mars, and Mars rules our relationship to anger
yeah.
and
And
action.
action. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's coming into play supportively. And on top of that, we have so much going on in Aries,
Yeah.
um, which is all about initiation and starting things and new beginnings, and kind of being confident enough to do something. And I call it fail fast, learn faster.
Yeah. It's the Fool card in tarot.
Right.
Aries
Exactly.
is totally the Fool card in tarot. It's like, I don't care if I'm about to walk off this cliff. It's cool. I like what I'm seeing up there. I'm going for it, you know?
And then we'll deal with the consequences because you can trust yourself that you'll figure it out. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that energy. And so, yeah, that's also coming in with this chart as well too.
Yeah. Well, there is a lot happening in March, right? Like we go into March with Venus retrograde. Then we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo and Mercury stationing retrograde the same day.
Yeah.
Then we have the solar eclipse with the new moon in Aries. Oh, and then we also, before that, we have on the 20th, we have us moving into Aries season with spring equinox. And
Right.
spring equinox on the 20th, spring equinox is always about the balance between light and dark, the balance between density and lightness, or like the balance between yin and yang. But spring equinox, for those of us on the northern hemisphere, it'll be autumn equinox for those in the southern hemisphere, but for those of us here in the northern hemisphere, it is that start into spring, that new beginning. That it's actually in astrology, it's the new year. It's the start of the new
Yeah.
year in astrology with Aries season as well. So the year is actually starting in March. And
Finally.
then and then we have the new moon in Aries with solar eclipse. And then we have
Neptune.
Neptune moving into Aries like a few days later, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about in our next moon video. We'll go more into that,
Yeah.
but it is a big, big month of change.
Yep. Absolutely. And a lot of
So,
Aries and change and new beginnings as
yeah,
well. New
new
cycles.
beginnings. So, however you might be feeling as we move into March, please note you'll probably be feeling a very different way as we exit March.
Yes.
And
Well said.
I'm very happy about that because today I'm not
Yeah.
feeling so good. So,
Just wait. Just be present. Feel it out. Don't make any decisions until like final decisions about how you feel about something. Don't make any judgment decisions because just wait.
yeah. Yeah. This is a lot of wait, see, respond.
Yeah.
But also when you feel that anger bubble up and it's like it's time to move, it's time to move.
Yeah.
It's time to
Right.
move. To trust that, to really trust that. So anyway, lots more. If you want more information on this particular full moon in Virgo with lunar eclipse, please check out the moon blog. We'll list it there. We'll list it below down there. Also, if you're looking for some extra support this season, um, this month, it's going to be an intense month. There's going to be a lot happening, both personally and collectively, big, strong energies of change. And if you're looking for just a little extra support, please know we've got you over the Intuitive Moon community. Not only are we meeting for our new moon and our full moon and our new moon circles, we also have an extra eclipse support circle this month where we'll be talking about eclipse energies and where I'll be doing intuitive reads and connecting in with our guides. So we have opportunities to come together in community, support each other, hold each other, and stay in that energy of responsiveness and openness to what will come, so that we don't have to wait for the lesson to come harsher again later on. So if you're interested, you can find more information. Sorry, my throat is a little, there we go. Sorry. If you're interested, you can find more listed below. We'll have it all down there. And please know when you join the Intuitive Moon community, you do have a 21-day free trial. So if you were to join now, you'd be able to join our full moon circle next week, along with the eclipse support circle the week after that, all as part of your trial period too. So you can check it out there. Um, I think that's it. Anything I'm missing, Sarah?
Um, intuitive magic.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Hello. And another thing, for those of you who are on the precipice of your own kind of reclamation of your spiritual and intuitive gifts. If you know you're intuitive, if you know you have some of these psychic skills, but you've never yet figured out, like, how do I work with this? How do I use it intentionally? I just want to let you know I have a group coaching program that's all about that. It's called Intuitive Magic. We start on March 25th. Doors are open now. It is a small program. I only take 10 people max for this program. We meet live every week. We'll be meeting for over 3 months. It's about 13 weeks. And we dive into so much from the clair abilities to the chakras and the auric field to somatic healing and the nervous system and language and crossing the veil and business and ethics and so much. We go into so much, and it is such a supportive and magical space. Doors are open now, and there's also an early bird pricing through March 11th as well. If you have any questions, please reach out. I will link it below. And that's available for you all right now too. Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in March. So, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you're looking for some extra support, please know myself and Sarah have a lot available through the Intuitive Moon community. And if you're really wanting to start reclaiming your own magic and remembering how magical life is, please check out Intuitive Magic because that's what that program is all about. So, thank you guys so much. Happy full moon in Virgo. Let yourself be angry if that feels like it's going to be supportive for you. And we got this. We got this, friends. Anything you want to share, Sarah?
No, that sums it up perfectly.
All right. Thank you, friends. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.